guys, and welcome back to another summer camp video. I am doing something new today. I'm mixing up a little bit. I'm going to start a new camp video series. Now, I want to talk about tricky situations at camp. Some things that you might come across that you maybe have no idea how to handle, and just some pointers and some tips from these kind of situations that I've experienced at camp and had to deal with, and just some of the ways that I've kind of helped people get through them and different things like that. So I did film a whole dealing with tricky camp situations video last year, but it was a 30-minute long video. I touched on maybe 5 or 6 different tricky situations at camp, and the whole video just seems a little bit mumble jumbled, if I'm honest. So I wanted to do a series and do short little videos and just talk about one tricky camp situation in each video. I feel like that could be really helpful, and the videos would be a lot shorter, and yeah, I feel like it's a lot easier to actually get a point across and how I would personally deal with some of these situations at camp, and hopefully it helps and gives you an idea of just, like I say, some things that you maybe didn't even think could be an issue at camp or could even come up as a tricky situation, and hopefully it can just open your mind up to some of these things and you can start thinking about ways in which you prepare. And one thing to remember is that when you have staff orientation at camp, they will cover a lot of these things anyway, but it's nice, I always find, to try and pre-plan and get those ideas in my head before actually even making my way to camp, just so I know kind of a little bit more about what to expect. So in this first video of this series, I'm going to talk about homesickness and how to kind of help a homesick camper get through some of the feelings they might be feeling at camp. And yeah, homesickness is one of those things that is so different person to person, and one thing to remember is that even us as staff feel homesick, so it's quite hard to have to help kids get through those homesick feelings when you could be going through the exact same thing. So yeah, I'm going to stop rambling. I'm going to talk about some of my tips and things that I know have helped with homesickness at camp. And if you've been at camp or if you've worked and you've had to deal with homesickness, please leave some of your tips down below so maybe it can help someone else out. But yeah, okay, so one thing to think about to start with is that homesickness will vary depending on the age group of kids that you do have. Now, I started with my girls when they were 7 years old, and they are turning 14 this year, which is wild to think. So obviously their homesickness now, not that it's non-existent, because they obviously still miss home, but it was so much more prevalent when they were freshmen, when they were 7 and 8 years old, because it was their first summer at camp, they were young, it was a big change. So I had to deal with homesickness a lot more then than I do now. But that's not to say that if you're dead set on having the 14, 15, 16-year-olds, you wouldn't necessarily have to deal with this, because you might still be in a situation where you have to speak to a younger camper who's feeling like that, or you've got co-counselors that are feeling really down and homesick, or some of your campers might feel that way. So this can hopefully help everyone. But yeah, just to remember that it is going to vary depending on the age group, and it is also going to vary depending on the person that you're talking to. Everyone deals with things differently, and in terms of homesickness, I find that some campers might want a hug, some campers might want you to go and sit with them and talk to them and try and get to the bottom of it, and some campers, when they feel homesick, are inconsolable, and they just don't want to have anyone talk to them, they just can't think, and they're just beside themselves, upset, emotional. And that's something to kind of remember, is that one thing that works for one homesick camper might not work for the next. So you've just got to kind of be really open-minded and just kind of see what works for each kid. So one of the best things that I found that worked for me when dealing with campers that felt homesickness was just relating to them. I think as international staff, we are able to relate with campers that feel that way, because we are thousands of miles away from home, some people for the first time, some staff as young as 18, 19 years old. So homesickness is very normal, even for staff as well as it is for the kids. So I would have my girls come up to me and they would say they were missing home, they missed their parents, and I'd be like, yeah, me too, it's okay. And they loved the fact that I was a role model and I was someone they could look up to. But I still had down days, and I had times when I was missing home, and I was like, oh, I'd love a hug from my mum right now. And they really appreciated that they could come to me for that, and I kind of understood what they were going through as well. I think the main thing that any kid or any person wants when they're feeling that way is just to be listened to. And I would just sit down with my campers, and if they wanted to talk to me about that, if they wanted to just sit in silence and just maybe have a little cry, just be given a hug or something, you just kind of have to adapt depending on the situation. But the one thing you definitely don't want to do is just brush it off and be like, oh, you were fine this morning, you can't be homesick, you're literally running around. Just those feelings can come on at any point, and especially because camp is such an overwhelming environment, and it is so unlike any other environment that I've ever been in. the most important thing is to just listen and actually sit there and be like, right, talk to me, what's going on, what's maybe made you feel like this, what's brought it on, what do you want me to do, how can I help, and just sit and have a conversation with them. One thing that I think works really good as well is to try and get your campers to remember the positive things that they have done at camp or they maybe do have coming up. So if they are feeling like that, maybe just try and like within the conversation almost like kind of distracting them from the way they're feeling, but not taking away from the fact they're feeling homesick, if that makes sense. So you could say something like, oh, what were your 3 favourite things we did today? Or what are 3 things you're really looking forward to next week? Or what are some things you want to go and tell your parents about when we have our phone calls next week? So kind of like taking their mind off the emotional side of feeling really homesick and just kind of still allowing them to feel sad about it, but trying to like distract them in a way and talk about different things, like more exciting things, like, oh, what about this evening activity we've got going on tonight? What are you going to wear when we have to dress up for this? Or what are you going to have for dinner? Or different things. And yeah, really try and remind them why they love camp and kind of the amazing things they do have going on at camp, because like I said, it can be a very overwhelming environment, and sometimes when you do get a little bit upset, you forget about all the fun things that camp brings. So sometimes maybe just taking a step back and actually sitting down and just being like, right, what are 3 things that you loved about today, and what can we maybe do tomorrow that are going to be some things that you really love again? I used to always find as well that the homesickness would kind of come on for my girls when it was late at night, we were getting ready for bed, and obviously during the day camp is so exciting and they're kept so busy and there's a lot going on, that it's the downtime as they're getting ready to go to sleep that kind of those feelings do resurface and they start to really miss home. So just sitting with them and actually again talking to them, trying to excite them about the day they've had or the day they've got coming up. One thing that we really push for the kids to do as well is to try and write letters home. Their parents send lots of letters into camp and we try and obviously want them to write as many letters back, and I found that was a really nice thing. Again, it was that almost like distracting but not distracting, like you're still thinking about home but we're doing it in a more exciting and fun way, and thinking, oh, like why don't we go and write a letter and we'll send a photo back home, or we'll tell them about what we've got coming up this weekend. So things that are going to excite them more than upset them about missing home. Another thing obviously will depend on the kind of camp that you work at and the length that your camp is. My camp is a 7-week sleepaway camp and the kids are there for the entire time and they only see their parents once on visiting day in the middle of the summer. Obviously this will kind of vary if you work at a session camp and the kids are only there for 2 weeks at a time, or a day camp where the kids are just there for the day. Obviously it might be slightly different. I imagine that homesickness is quite a thing at all camps regardless of kind of the length of time the kids are there, but something to bear in mind that obviously the kids at longer sleepaway camps are probably going to struggle a little bit more because it's 4 weeks before they're actually seeing their families again. But another thing that would be really exciting, I'd be like, oh, we've got visiting day coming up, why don't we start writing a list of all the things you want to make sure you remember you tell your parents about on visiting day. The kids are able to sign up for like extra sports and stuff on visiting day at my camp, and it would be like, why don't we think about if you want to do tennis or if you want to do water skiing, the kind of things that you want to show your family when they get here for visiting day. And again, it's that keeping them excited and reminding them of why they love camp and the fact that their parents are going to be here so soon, and then camp is going to be over before they know it. And that's what I'm going to finish the video off on saying, is that reminding your campers that camp is such a short space of time and it's over before you know it. Like genuinely, when I get to camp, I'm like, right, the summer is basically over, because everything goes by literally like that. It goes so fast. So one thing to remind your kids is that, like, obviously it's okay to feel these emotions and it's completely normal to feel homesick and miss home, but one thing to remember is that you want to try and enjoy camp as much as possible, because it's going to be the end of the summer before you know it. You'll be at home and you'll just be wishing that you were back at camp again. So trying to remind them again of that camp is for such a short space of time, and everyone always says, like, at camp you live 10 for 2. You live the 10 months out of the year for the 2 months you get at camp. So reminding them, exciting them, and also giving them the amazing distractions that camp does provide, and keeping the excitement high within the bunk, and making sure that you lean on your co-counselors as well. Also rely on your head staff. If you have a kid that is really struggling with homesickness, ask for help. It doesn't have to just be you that's kind of having to have those conversations all day every day, because it can be really hard. So yeah, ask around, communicate, ask your co-counselors for help if you feel like you need it, ask head staff, ask your division leaders, group leaders, because everyone is there to help. I really enjoyed filming that. I thought that was quite nice to just like target one specific thing and yeah, just give you a little bit of info on it. So I've got a few others that I'm gonna do in separate videos. If you have any other kind of like tricky situations that you might have heard about or you're worried about not knowing how to handle at camp, please leave them down below and I can put them into another video as part of this series. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed and I hope that helps. Like I say, that's just from my personal experience and some of the things that have worked for me at camp. Everyone is different. You will handle things differently, and every kid that feels these feelings will be completely different. So bear that in mind, but this is hopefully just something that could give you some ideas and can kind of prepare you for some of these things at camp. But thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video.